so we got our environment up and running. Now we want to actually start building. So the first thing to do is just some basic file structure stuff. So just make sure you have a tab open. Again, leave your bundler running, otherwise your app will crash. And we don't even have any kind of like source directory or anywhere to keep our JavaScript files. So that's the first thing I want to do. So I'm going to do, I think that's good. Make source directory. Again, some people call it JS, doesn't matter. And then in there, we've been doing this a bunch, so I already know what kind of folders we're going to end up needing. I want to make a components, config, and then we're going to go into our components directory, and I'm going to make a directory called screens, containers, and presentation, or view. I'll call it view. I'm going to rename containers to keep them all plural, keep them consistent. Sorry, I have to rename view to keep them all consistent. Alright, and obviously our first screen we're going to need is this main layout screen. So cd into our screens, and we're going to need that index file like we always do. And let's just call this main. And so like the actual map and then the other overlay are going to actually end up being kind of separate containers that live in main. So I don't want to call it map or anything. So I'm just going to say import main from, and main's a little vague, but it's not the end of the world. And then, so let's make a main.js. And let's just import just a view and view text style sheet, just the most basic stuff, just to see if it's rendering. From React Native. Okay, and let's save this. Hopefully it doesn't crash. And let's go back to our app.js source. I typically like to put this app.js in my source directory actually. So I'm going to take this, and here where we import app from /app, just change this to source app. And you'll see why later, because we start to use more components when we set up our navigator, so it kind of just makes sense. So just grab this app.js and drop it in our source. And let's see if this, okay. And then in our app.js, we want to import our other screens. And we don't need any of this stuff anymore, because this is basically just going to become like our root component that holds these other screens. So all this stuff we can get rid of. I'll leave this one view here. And for now, I'm just going to say import main from our screens directory, which is going to be in our components. And then let's just see if this renders in the corner here, because we have like no styling. So main.js does not exist. Components / screens. Component screens. Import main from main.js. Okay, so just make sure you include the relative path here. And oh, sorry, I deleted our style sheet here, which I'll just leave for now. All right, so let's just add those back in. View. Okay, let's do this. For now, we just want to see if this is working. Let's just return main. And get rid of all these styles. Alright, and see it's covered here, so it is working. And again, it seems like a lot of work to set this up, but as your app expands, if you don't have any kind of like structure, it's going to become unstructured, or like rules of how you want to structure things going to become unwieldy very quickly. So that's why we kind of do that. Alright, so let's pull back up our picture. And again, this is going to be a separate container that overlays this, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to need some sort of, let's get this tab bar out of the way. And again, we're only going to be focused on like this search page, but if you guys want to build it out on your own, this is actually one of the more confusing parts. We've done the other videos, but let's just do it again and get this bar in there out of the way. So let's come back to here for our app. And so we're going to need to install React Navigation. So install React Navigation. And pretty much any app you're going to use is going to use this, so let's just get it out of the way. Alright, we could do import tab navigator from React Navigation. And then I'm going to say const tabs equals tab navigator, sorry. And then here we're going to render tabs. And for now we don't have the other screen, so I'm just going to put the same one screen in as a dummy. And the way this works is it takes our takes all the objects of the different tabs we want, and then navigation options here for any extra stuff we want to configure. So I'm just going to kind of set that up so we have it for when we need it. And again, for now we only have this one tab, so I'm going to just basically do I'm going to see if it lets us just use the same screen, which it should. All right, let's refresh our app. So you can see now we have these tabs down here. We'll come back to get the icons later. I just wanted to more get that laid out. But you'll see we have, our general tabs which we're going to need. Let's look back at our image quick. And let's talk about how we want to structure this. So this, I think we should start with this maps because that's going to be one of the biggest pieces, and then later we'll do the overlay. And so we need this map piece here, which is pretty much going to be the full screen, and then that's going to also, there's going to be a separate search container which is going to be an overlay. So try to think how many components we want. So this here is going to be its own component. The map is going to be a component, and then I think this redo search in area. Well, these are technically with the map, but we'll create like a separate component for them, and we'll have them speak with each other. So I think the first thing we should do is get started with our map. So what we're going to do is just pretend, I wanted to show you guys, like pretend, I've only worked this once, but pretend like I want to use a map, right? So I'm literally just going to go to Google and just type React Native, because this is a common question. Like how do you decide what pieces to use? So I Google it, there's a GitHub, React Native Maps. Take a look, people are updating it as of a month ago. And right here you'll see they are upgrading to work with React Native 0.54, which is good. Compatibility, all these components, that's great. But what I also do is I go to NPM sometimes, and I'm going to type in that same React Native Maps. I just get it wrong. And look, in the last week, 50,000 downloads. So it's a pretty common, like React Navigation, for example. That's like the most common navigation library. Check it out, they got 90,000, so that's pretty good. Like 45,000 weekly downloads is a ton, so it's well supported. We're going to use it, so let's just React Native Navigation. Oh, just going to jump back to GitHub, and we're going to install it. And so go to your terminal, React Native Maps, and while that's going, we're going to need a container component. So go to this container directory and cd into it. And we're going to create an index.js because we haven't done so yet, and I'm going to call this map.js. And do the same thing we did before. And in here we got to make our base component while that's installing. So we really know nothing about this yet. We haven't looked at the documentation. We're going to probably need a view to wrap this in, right? So let's just import view for now from React Native. And then here we're going to do standard render return block. And let's see if this is done installing. All right, it's all installed. And do another text here. Text. Now let's just move our text to here, just so we know that this is showing up, and then we can start to test. You don't want to start trying to like test the maps, making sure it's installed, and you're like, oh, it's not working. And then it turns out it's some issue with you just didn't load this component in right, and it's rendering in some other component that you're not displaying, and you spin your wheels for 2 hours. So just throw some text in here. Let's go back, and I know it's a lot of boilerplate, all these components, but I'm telling you, it gets out of hand if you don't have some sort of structure like this for you. And here, instead of text, we're going to import our container. See this jumbled text up there, so that's working. Now let's try to start, let's see what we need to import from. We're going to have to import something here from React Native Maps to start. I suspect we're going to have a fair bit of configuration actually, so I might have to general use. So right here, they're using an example. I'm going to just use their example. Perhaps we don't have any native configuration. Let's find out. So we're going to import map view from React Native Maps. And right here, let's just steal their example just to make sure it's working. Then we got to start trying to, find our way around. All right, native component does not exist, so we do need to do some configure installation instructions. Okay, so we actually, let's see, iOS important. This is probably going to take about 15 minutes, so I'm going to start this in the next series where we're just going to configure Google Maps. Alright guys, see you in part 3 and we'll get this set up.